Imagine walking through a city that's burning not from bombs, not from hatred, but from blind ignorance. Crowds cheer as their freedoms are taken away. People smile as they're led into deception. A man on the street repeats slogans he doesn't understand, and another obeys orders he never questioned. This isn't fiction. This is history. This is reality. And this is why Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a man who stared into the eyes of the Nazi regime, came to a terrifying conclusion: stupidity is more dangerous than evil.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
When we hear the word evil, we think of villains with cruel intentions. We imagine schemers, tyrants, murderers. We think of those who know they are doing wrong and choose to do it anyway. But stupidity wears a softer mask. It doesn't scream. It doesn't threaten. It smiles. It nods. It follows. And that's precisely what makes it so deadly. Because while evil has a motive, stupidity has momentum. It spreads like wildfire, jumping from mind to mind, burning down truth without even realizing it's on fire. You might be wondering, what exactly did Bonhoeffer mean by stupidity? He wasn't talking about low intelligence or lack of education. Some of the most dangerous stupidities in history came from highly educated people. He meant something deeper: a moral failure, a psychological blindness, the kind of stupidity that shuts down thought, that refuses to question, that becomes obedient to ideas without understanding them. It's the kind of stupidity that makes a person not just wrong, but unreachable. And here's where the real journey begins. Because if stupidity is deadlier than evil, then we need to understand how it's born. It's not something you catch like a virus. It's something you become slowly, subtly, through habits of thinking, through surrendering your responsibility to think. It starts when you stop asking why. When you start repeating what others say without examining it. When you choose comfort over curiosity. Have you ever done that? Have you ever agreed with something just because it was easier than challenging it? Bonhoeffer observed that stupidity often blossoms in groups. When people come together in a crowd, the pressure to conform becomes overwhelming. We laugh at what the group laughs at. We believe what the group believes. And slowly, we hand over our minds, one piece at a time. This is why totalitarian regimes love stupidity. Not because they want fools, but because they want obedience. A stupid person, in Bonhoeffer's words, is incapable of independent thought and therefore a danger to others. Now here's the twist that will shake you. The stupid person is often more dangerous than the evil one because you can't argue with them. Evil can be exposed. It can be resisted. But stupidity doesn't respond to logic. It doesn't even hear you. It's not a position, it's a condition, a psychological fog. And trying to reason with it is like trying to blow away a storm with your breath. So what do we do? If stupidity is this powerful, this toxic, how do we defend ourselves? The answer is not to mock it, not to shame it, in that only feeds it. Stupidity thrives on ridicule because it turns the stupid person deeper into their tribe, deeper into their beliefs. The real antidote is awakening, not just for others, but for ourselves. Because the terrifying truth is we are all capable of becoming stupid, every single one of us. Think about the last time you believed something just because someone you admired said it, or the last time you dismissed a perspective without understanding it, or the last time you avoided a hard truth because it made you uncomfortable. These are the seeds, and if we don't catch them, they grow. They grow into dogmas, into ideologies, into blindness. And then we become the very danger we fear. Bonhoeffer's insight wasn't just philosophical, it was prophetic. He watched as his own country turned from a nation of thinkers and artists into a machine of obedience and destruction. He saw churches fall silent, intellectuals fall in line, neighbors betray each other, not because they were evil, but because they stopped thinking. They chose the easy path, the comforting lie, and the cost was millions of lives. But Bonhoeffer didn't stop at diagnosis. He offered a path forward, a narrow, difficult path, one that demands courage, consciousness, and relentless self-examination. It begins with reclaiming our minds, with refusing to be spoon-fed beliefs, with questioning not just others, but ourselves. Am I thinking clearly? Am I being honest with myself? Am I seeing reality, or just the version that comforts me? This is not just about philosophy, it's about survival. Because every time in history that humanity has descended into darkness, it was not just because evil people acted, but because good people didn't think. They didn't resist. They didn't see what was happening until it was too late. And that's why stupidity is deadlier. Because it lets evil in. It holds the door open and offers it tea. Let me ask you something deep, so deep it might change the way you look at your own reflection. What lies are you living with because they're easier than the truth? What beliefs have you inherited without testing? What systems do you support with your silence? These are not accusations. They are invitations to awaken, to think, to become dangerous, not in violence, but in awareness. Because here's the part we must never forget. Thinking is dangerous. Truly thinking, not parroting, not posturing, but digging into truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Power structures fear thinkers. Tyrants fear critical minds. Because a thinking person is unpredictable. They can't be controlled. They ask questions that shake foundations. They see through illusions. And they refuse to worship false gods. Bonhoeffer believed that stupidity was not an intellectual issue, but a moral one. That's revolutionary, because it means we don't need to be geniuses to resist it. We need to be good. We need to be brave. We need to be willing to see what others ignore. Is to speak when others are silent. To think when others follow. That's the war we're fighting, not just against external threats, but against the sleep inside our own minds. And the battlefield is everywhere. In your workplace, in your family, on your social media feed, in the books you read, in the conversations you avoid. Every moment is a choice to think or not to think, to ask or to obey, to see or to pretend. And those choices shape your soul. So what kind of person do you want to be? The one who repeats or the one who reflects? The one who follows or the one who questions? The one who drifts into stupidity or the one who fights for clarity? These are the questions Bonhoeffer left us with, not as judgments, but as a call to arms. a call to awaken a generation sleepwalking toward disaster. And make no mistake, this isn't just about politics or history. It's about the human condition, about how easily we trade truth for comfort, how eagerly we accept answers instead of seeking them, how quickly we fall in line when thinking becomes painful. But the pain of thinking is the price of freedom. And without it, we are not free. We are slaves to the loudest voice in the room. Bonhoeffer paid for his clarity with his life. He was hanged by the Nazis for refusing to follow, for refusing to be silent, for refusing to become stupid. His legacy is not just in what he wrote, but in how he lived. And it leaves us with a burning question: what will we do with our minds? Will we use them, or will we surrender them? Let's go deeper. If stupidity is not simply the absence of intelligence, but the absence of moral clarity, then we must ask, how does it grow in the soul of a person who once cared, once thought, once knew right from wrong? Because it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not a lightning strike. It's a quiet surrender, a slow erosion, 1,000 tiny compromises that eventually become your character. And it often begins with fear. Fear is the architect of stupidity. When people are afraid of losing status, security, community, they begin to shut down the risky parts of the mind. The part that questions, the part that doubts, the part that challenges what's popular. In its place, they build walls. Walls made of slogans, ideologies, comfortable lies. These walls don't just keep danger out, they keep truth out. And once truth is outside the walls, stupidity moves in like fog, filling every corner with its numbing silence. Have you ever felt that fear? The fear of standing alone? The fear of being misunderstood, attacked, or rejected for thinking differently. That fear is real. It's powerful. And it's one of the main reasons people choose stupidity. Not because they're bad, but because they're scared. Scared that thinking will cost them their tribe. And in a world where belonging is everything, that cost can feel unbearable. But here's the paradox. The price of keeping that tribe, when it's built on lies, is far greater. You lose yourself. Bonhoeffer saw this in Nazi Germany. He witnessed people abandon their conscience to stay safe. They watched evil rise but said nothing. They heard screams in the night and closed their windows, not because they were monsters, because they were afraid. And fear turned them into something worse than monsters, passive instruments of destruction. Because when you stop thinking, you don't just fail to resist evil. You become part of it. So what does it mean to resist stupidity? It means courage, not the loud kind you see in movies, the quiet kind, the daily kind, the kind that chooses truth in small moments over and over again, even when no one notices. Especially when no one notices. It's the courage to ask, what if I'm wrong? What if the group is wrong? What if the thing I've believed all my life is a lie? And that kind of courage is rare, but it's the only thing that keeps stupidity from taking over. And here's something that will shake your soul. Stupidity doesn't always look stupid. It can look passionate, righteous, even noble. That's what makes it so deceiving. When someone stops thinking and starts repeating, they often speak with more confidence, not less. They believe they're on the side of good. They believe they're saving the world. But belief without thought is a weapon without aim. And that weapon can do more damage than evil ever could. Because evil often hides. It knows it's wrong. But stupidity marches proudly through the streets, waving flags and shouting slogans. It doesn't question its mission. It doesn't pause to reflect. It doesn't ask who it's hurting. It just moves forward like a machine, crushing nuance, crushing truth, crushing anything that doesn't fit its narrow view of reality. And when stupidity gains enough momentum, it becomes untouchable, immune to debate, immune to reflection, immune to redemption. Have you ever tried to reason with someone who stopped thinking? Not just disagreed with you, but refused to even consider another perspective. That's not just frustrating, it's dangerous. Because the moment dialogue dies, violence waits in the wings. And history shows us again and again, when people stop thinking, they start destroying. Not just others, themselves too. So how do we protect ourselves? How do we keep from becoming what we fear? The answer isn't more intelligence. It's more humility. Stupidity thrives on arrogance, the belief that we already know everything worth knowing. But humility opens the door to learning, to listening, to growing. It says, I might be wrong. It says, let me understand before I judge. It says, truth matters more than my pride. And it's not just about being humble with others. It's about being humble with yourself. Looking in the mirror and asking, what have I accepted without examining? What have I repeated without questioning? What have I avoided because it made me uncomfortable? That kind of self-interrogation is painful. But it's also powerful, because every time you choose to think honestly, you reclaim a piece of your soul. Bonhoeffer believed that stupidity wasn't just a personal failure, it was a social disease. It spread through culture, through media, through institutions. And once it infected a society, it became almost impossible to uproot. Because it didn't just live in individuals. It lived in systems, in norms, in expectations. And resisting it meant more than just thinking clearly. It meant standing against the tide, risking exile, risking loss, risking everything. Are you willing to do that? To be the one who sees clearly when everyone else is blind? To be the voice of reason in a storm of slogans? To be the person who chooses thought over obedience, even when it costs you? That's the real test. Not whether you're smart, but whether you're brave. Brave enough to think in a world that punishes thinking. And let's not forget the role of language. Stupidity corrupts language before it corrupts minds. It turns complex issues into sound bites. It replaces nuance with certainty. It uses words not to illuminate, but to manipulate. And when language becomes a tool of stupidity, thought becomes impossible. Because if you can't say what you mean, you can't think what you need. That's why dictators always attack language first. Because if they can control your words, they can control your world. So pay attention to the words you use, the words you hear. Ask yourself, do they help me think, or do they tell me what to think? Do they open my mind or close it? Do they lead me toward truth or away from it? Language is not just communication. It's construction. It builds the reality you live in. Build wisely. And now, let's bring this home. Because the danger of stupidity isn't just out there, it's in here. In your mind, in your heart, in your habits. Every time you choose not to think, you take one step closer to the abyss. Every time you silence your doubt, you build another wall. Every time you choose what's easy over what's true, you lose a piece of yourself. And one day you wake up and wonder how you became someone you don't even recognize. But the reverse is also true. Every time you question, you reclaim your power. Every time you reflect, you sharpen your vision. Every time you speak truth, even when it's hard, you protect the world from falling deeper into darkness. You may not see the impact right away, but it matters. It all matters. So ask yourself again, am I thinking? Or am I just following? Am I searching for truth? Or for reassurance? Am I becoming more aware? Or more obedient? These questions are not just intellectual. They are spiritual. They are the difference between being alive and just existing. Bonhoeffer gave his life for these questions. He didn't die because he hated evil. He died because he loved truth, and that love made him dangerous to a regime built on lies. You can be dangerous too, not through violence, but through vision, not through force, but through thought, not through domination, but through integrity. And that's the final irony. The stupid person thinks they are safe, but they are the most vulnerable because they are puppets and they don't even know it. The thinking person, though often alone, is the only one who is truly free. Free to choose, free to speak, free to become more than a cog in someone else's machine. Now we stand at the edge of the idea. We've seen how stupidity is not a lack of intellect, but a surrender of moral responsibility. We've seen how it grows in the shadow of fear, how it finds shelter in groups, and how it wears the mask of passion, certainty, and obedience. But what happens when stupidity is institutionalized? When it becomes not just an individual failure, but a pillar of how society operates? That's where the real danger begins. Because then, stupidity doesn't just resist change, it protects itself. Look at the systems around us. Educational systems that reward memorization but not critical thought. Media systems that profit from outrage rather than insight. Political systems that rely on loyalty instead of truth. Religious systems that punish doubt rather than embrace mystery. All of them, in subtle and overt ways, cultivate the kind of stupidity Bonhoeffer warned us about. Stupidity that becomes self-sustaining, self-justifying, and self-replicating. And in these systems, the most dangerous people are not the obviously evil ones. It's the ones who have stopped thinking, but believe they're doing good. The bureaucrat who blindly follows rules that hurt people. The citizen who defends injustice because it's wrapped in a flag. The teacher who discourages questions. The preacher who silences nuance. The influencer who spreads misinformation with a smile. They don't need to be malicious. They just need to be on autopilot. This is why Bonhoeffer's insight is so radical. It flips the script. We're taught to fear evil men in dark rooms, plotting sinister plans. But we should fear the ordinary man in the bright room, obeying without question. Because he is the one who will carry out the orders. He is the one who will normalize the absurd. He is the one who will look you in the eye and say, "I'm just doing my job," while the world burns behind him. And yet, within this terrifying truth lies a powerful opportunity. Because if stupidity is a condition, not an identity, then it can be undone. Not easily, not quickly, but it can. The path is through awareness, through education not in facts, but in thinking, through conversations that challenge, not confirm, through communities that value growth, not conformity, through leaders who ask questions, not just give answers. But it starts with you, with your willingness to walk a harder path. Because thinking hurts. It breaks the illusion of certainty. It exposes the contradictions in your own beliefs. It forces you to admit when you've been wrong. That's not glamorous. It doesn't go viral. But it's sacred. It's real. It's the work of liberation. Ask yourself, when was the last time I changed my mind? Not because I was forced to, but because I truly listened, truly thought, and saw something I hadn't seen before. That's the sign of a mind that is alive. That's the sign of a person who is resisting the pull of stupidity, not by being smarter, but by being more honest. And honesty is rare, because it requires a kind of inner stillness, a willingness to look at the parts of yourself that are ugly, ignorant, or blind. It's easier to project that onto others, to say, they're the stupid ones, they're the problem. But Bonhoeffer would challenge you to turn the mirror back on yourself. Where have you stopped thinking? Where have you chosen slogans over substance? Where have you allowed fear to silence your questions? We all have those moments, and that's okay. The goal isn't perfection, it's vigilance. It's staying awake. Because the moment you stop watching your mind, the world will fill it with noise. And that noise becomes your beliefs. And those beliefs become your actions. And those actions become history. And here's something else Bonhoeffer understood: stupidity is seductive. It offers safety, simplicity, certainty. It tells you what to think, who to hate, what to fear. It gives you a tribe, a purpose, a script. And in a chaotic world, that feels good. But what feels good isn't always what is good. And the cost of that comfort is your autonomy, your freedom, your soul. So how do we resist the seduction? We build habits of thought. We read things we disagree with. We ask questions that have no easy answers. We spend time with people who challenge us. We practice humility, not as a weakness, but as a strength. Because humility says, I'm still learning. And that simple phrase is the antidote to stupidity. We also resist by creating space, silence, reflection, time away from the noise. Because the engines of stupidity run on distraction. If you are constantly stimulated, constantly entertained, constantly reacting, you don't have the space to think. And without thought, you become a puppet. So take the time. Unplug. Sit with your thoughts. Ask the deep questions. Who am I becoming? What do I truly believe? What am I avoiding? And then act. Thought without action is just decoration. But action without thought is just destruction. The world needs more people who combine both, who reflect deeply and then move courageously, who speak not from echo chambers, but from inner clarity, who lead not by controlling others, but by mastering themselves. That's what Bonhoeffer did. He didn't just write about these ideas. He lived them. He resisted a regime that demanded stupidity. He questioned when everyone else obeyed. He spoke when silence was safer. He died not as a martyr, but as a thinker. A man who refused to be stupid, even when it cost him everything. And that's the legacy he left us. Not a set of answers, but a challenge. Will you think? Will you resist? Will you choose the uncomfortable truth over the convenient lie? Will you become the kind of person who sees clearly when the world goes blind? Because the world is always going blind. History is always repeating. And the choice is always yours. To be awake or asleep. To be free or enslaved. To be a thinker or a follower. Not once, but every day. In every conversation. In every belief. In every post you share, every opinion you hold, every silence you allow. So ask yourself, if stupidity is deadlier than evil, what am I doing to make sure I don't become part of that danger? What am I doing to help others wake up? What am I doing to protect truth in a world that rewards lies? You don't need to be a genius. You don't need a platform. You just need to care, to pay attention, and to think. And in doing so, you become a light in the fog, a voice in the silence, a soul that refuses to be sold. That is the power you hold. That is the revolution within reach. And it begins not tomorrow, not next year, but now, in this moment, in this breath. In this choice. Think well, love deeply, and never stop questioning.